Hi, everyone, and welcome to Grid Chats, bite-sized conversations on the hottest issues shaping our energy future. I'm your host, Michael Wu, and today I'm joined by Rachel Ross. She's the brand new Vice President for Energy Policy at the Information Technology Industry Council. She's got more than 20 years of experience on energy policy across government and the private sector, including most recently as the Deputy Chief Sustainability Officer at the U.S. Department of Defense. Rachel Ross, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. Happy to be here.
Rachel, you just published an op-ed that articulates, one, a lot of challenges and issues with our access to electricity in the future, which is obviously critical to our economic and national security, including massive demand growth driven by data centers, reshored manufacturing, electrification across our economy, also extreme weather events, aging infrastructure, et cetera, all the things that I'm sure our audience is very familiar with. Your recommendations in the face of all these challenges really includes deploying a suite of commercially available technologies that can squeeze more out of our existing infrastructure rather than investing in massive new build-outs. Can you just give our audience an understanding of what those technologies are and how they work and why they'll be helpful to address these challenges?
I will say we still do need to do the massive infrastructure build out as well for the longer term, but at least in this near term crunch with this need for speed to power, there are technologies available today that can unlock the latent capacity that's available on the system as the kind of longer term infrastructure is being developed. Those technologies include, like you said, kind of a whole suite. We have dynamic line ratings, which allow operators to see what the actual line capacity is as opposed to relying on fixed assumptions. So using sort of real time conditions like ambient air temperature and wind, et cetera, to be able to get more on the line, more capacity. Advanced power flow control is kind of like the traffic control, where you're thinking about where there's congestion and moving around that. Topology optimization is kind of like your navigation app, like Waze for the grid, in terms of seeing where traffic and congestion is and providing kind of alternate routes. And then you have advanced conductors. Think about your kind of traditional transmission wires and lines, like using advanced and sort of newer, more flexible and material that can really move more through the system, increase capacity, decrease thermal sag, et cetera. AI-enabled software. We have tools like digital twins and real-time analytics are enabled through these that can help operators improve optimization on the system. And then you have flexibility solutions as well. So batteries, distributed energy resources that allow the grid to relieve, in moments of stress, free up capacity. So that's kind of a high-level summary of those various tools and technologies that are available across the kind of hardware and software spectrum.
We're facing these capacity concerns that you outlined in the piece. We're facing affordability crisis. We're seeing large scale spikes in electricity prices across the country. So if these technologies could help us strengthen efficiency of our electricity system, could help reduce costs, what's holding them back? Why aren't they being deployed at scale across our system now?
So the grid enhancing technologies I talked about, kind of those first three, those are often there's a lot of conversation around this right now, and a number of reports that have come out. And kind of the common barrier that people talk about and point to is the misaligned incentives. So the way that our utility rate structure is currently designed, the utilities are incentivized to build infrastructure, right? And it needs to be reliable. And there's kind of this return on equity that's tied to their capital expenditures. When you have software solutions and some of these sort of grid enhancing technologies, these often are more on the operational expenditure side of the ledgers. It makes it more challenging to incentivize these types of solutions to be deployed. There are a number of other challenges. I was just at the FERC technical conference earlier this week where we talked about a number of these challenges underway, and the software piece is a really big one. I heard one utility rep say, it's really easy actually relatively to deploy the hardware solutions, but when you're talking about GETs and these grid enhancing technologies, but the software that enables you to use that information and that data in a way that you get those efficiency and kind of system optimization gains that are intended by these technologies, that is a big lift. And it takes a lot of time. They have to get sort of legacy systems interfacing with this new data. And it's just a very, a lot of complexity. And so that can be a challenge that then relates to the sort of culture change issue that we see with a lot of innovation, right? Where you have folks used to doing business in a certain way, using certain systems, and bringing in sort of these new technologies that they might not be familiar with. That requires training, that requires lessons sharing, and kind of building capacity within the workforce to become more comfortable with these new solutions.
What would unlocking those solutions take? Like, what are the steps that we could take from a policy perspective or a programmatic perspective that could help enable more efficient and cheaper energy future?
There's a lot of opportunity here for government leadership and action, and we're seeing some great progress already. So it's an exciting time, I would say. As we heard from our utility friends earlier this week, that kind of going from 0 to 1 can be harder than going from 1 to scale because of all that startup costs, like I was talking about with like the software, getting the systems to talk and that sort of thing. So having some government support available for pilot programs, we already have great examples with the Spark program and others. So scaling that up and bringing sort of more technical support and resources to the utilities and operators would be really catalytic. Also, having playbooks and sort of additional resources available to get at some of that culture change and training, and then just additional financial support, whether that's through grants or through loans. The energy dominance financing office just closed a deal this week, like 100 projects in there for transmission, and some of that does include reconductoring. So that's a great example of being able to bring down the cost of capital for a utility through this kind of government loan that has a lower interest rate. So there's a number of sort of promising pieces of progress out there. It's exciting to see that move forward and hoping that we can see that scale up.
So for people who want to learn more about this issue, where should they go?
So I would, of course, direct them to the ITI website, where we have our energy policy recommendations that talk a lot about these grid enhancing technologies and some of these other solutions. And we also have some blog posts where we cover some of the bipartisan proposals on the Hill that are kind of moving right now, related to some of these technologies that we're supportive of. On my op-ed that I posted, I linked in that a lot of the studies that I found helpful, that as I'm kind of continuing to stay up to speed on these issues, that'd be a great place to find additional reports and things to read. And then the Department of Energy, of course, they have some excellent resources. The Idaho National Lab has a summary of like 100 case studies on grid enhancing technologies. And of course, I'm happy to connect if folks want to reach out via LinkedIn for further conversations.
Terrific. Rachel Ross, thank you so much for joining Grid Chats.
Thank you. Happy to be here, Mike. Thanks again.